Journey Through Sci-Fi.
Ah! Oh! Oh! I'm thin! I'm thin! Look at my cheekbones! I have cheekbones! Look at my cheekbones! Yes! Look at my chest! Look at my breast! Oh, I don't have breasts! I'm an acre!
Let's try and describe you. You're an elastomer. Yes, you're foldable. You're gullible. Ooh, you're ductile. You're elastic.
Hello and welcome to Journey Through Sci-Fi, where we journey through the many subgenres of science fiction on screen. I'm Matt.
And I'm James, and in this series we're exploring the sci-fi subgenre of mad science. And in today's episode we'll be looking at The Nutty Professor from 1996 and Flubber from 1997.
Yes, we're returning to the comedy pairing that we looked at earlier in the series when we talked about Jerry Lewis's Nutty Professor and the Absent-Minded Professor that's been remade into Flubber. So two late 90s reversionings of those comedy mad science movies.
Yeah, we looked at those way back in March, so it's been a long time since we looked at those initial 60s films, but I think as we move into the 90s, as we sort of like get towards the end of our mad science series as the months go on, we're seeing a bit of a switch up in the way that mad scientists are viewed, but also the advances in technology that happens in the 90s in terms of filmmaking. And I think all of that stuff will come into our discussion today as we look at these 90s remakes of these two classic mad science films.
Yes, well, let's get talking about that generational shift into the 90s from the 60s with The Nutty Professor, directed by Tom Shadyac.
Where there's a will, there's a way, and there is a way we can turn these genes off. And I'm not talking about using exercise or diet. I'm talking about by taking a simple solution that helps reconstruct your metabolic cellular strands, thus giving you the appearance of, as they say in medical terms, gluteus minimus, or in layman's terms, an extremely tight, wonderful ass. Let's get a big round of applause for the woman with the nice ass, huh? Ass is so nice, don't you agree?
Okay, so Nutty Professor from 1996. We've got Eddie Murphy taking over from Jerry Lewis. First off, how do you feel about that switch? Because you weren't a massive fan of Jerry Lewis's performance in the original Nutty Professor. So I just wondered how you felt about Eddie Murphy in comparison, like comedy-wise.
I definitely think that Eddie Murphy is generally much funnier than Jerry Lewis. Apologies, Jerry Lewis fans. I know how beloved he is. I found him annoying. I couldn't get past that. Interestingly, I think Eddie Murphy does tread the line between hilarious and annoying quite a lot throughout his career, and he does it in this movie. On balance, I think Eddie Murphy is more funny than annoying, but he's also got a lot of terrible films under his belt at this point. But this is late 90s Eddie. He's king of the world, isn't he?
Yeah, before you get The Adventures of Pluto Nash, which we covered on Patreon a little while back. And he had a very interesting career in the 90s. Obviously, he came to prominence through the comedy circuit and then just blew up. And then this time roundabout in sort of like in the mid-90s, he's becoming more of a... He veers into these family films, doesn't he? Because I remember Dr. Dolittle came out around about this time, maybe a few years after.
Yeah.
He's kind of softening his act a little bit and appealing more to kind of like mainstream audiences in terms of like family-friendly films and those kind of things. Because when he came out of his comedy stuff, it's very sweary. It's this kind of change in his career, which I think is... if you compare him to like an Arnie went from one kind of actor to more of a comedy, family-friendly actor.
Yeah.
And again, you saw that kind of like in Eddie Murphy's career. At least I think you did, like looking back now.
I think you do, but on reflection, I think maybe The Nutty Professor sits right on the border of that. You know, this is after 3 Beverly Hills Cop movies and quite a long time now after comedies like, you know, Coming to America and stuff. And he did the 48 Hours films as well. But like, he's going to move into more family stuff. This film is swearier than I remembered and less family friendly than I remember it being from the 90s. So but it's a very broad comedy. It's very silly, special effects heavy, and like kids obviously loved it, but I don't know how much kids were actually being targeted. In my memory, this was a kids' movie, but watching it again, I don't think so quite as much. So maybe this is like right on that kind of edge. And I think Dr. Dolittle is his next film, which is much more family friendly and family oriented, whereas this is a bawdy sex comedy at times, isn't it? Which wasn't my takeaway when I was, I don't know, 10 or whatever.
I guess that kind of takes it back to the original version, that 60s version though, doesn't it? Because it's the swinging 60s, and that one felt a bit like, as much as it had all the slapstick humour in it, it felt like it was a bit on the raunchier side. And with it being a product of the 60s, it had all of that kind of stuff in there. So I feel like that kind of translates into this version as well. But again, we're looking at this Jekyll and Hyde split scientist trope, aren't we, in this? This version of the Nutty Professor changes the transformation, doesn't it? It's reinterpreting what Jerry Lewis was doing. In Jerry Lewis's original version, you've got a stereotypical nerdy scientist who's a bit socially awkward, transforming into this smooth crooner. And in this, it becomes about body image as well, doesn't it? And I think that's an interesting turn of events for this reimagining of this idea.
Yes, it's all about weight loss, which is a very interesting 1990s thing. He's got a fridge full of, it's not Slim Fast, but it's a kind of Richard Simmons parody branded version of Slim Fast and all these ready meals, low calorie meals. He's obsessed with calories. It's kind of all about weight as body image, whereas for Jerry Lewis, it was much more about personality, wasn't it? I mean, Jerry Lewis has a physical transformation, but it's really just slicking back his hair, taking off the glasses, that kind of thing, to look like a different person, and the way he carries himself. But for Eddie Murphy, it's hours and hours in a makeup chair to transform him into Sherman Klump, and then remove that for Buddy Love.
But they both have that body transformation in, don't they? And they both have a scene in a gym, which is one of the things which I noticed watching this now, having the context of watching the original film. They both got gym scenes, but they're very different, because in Jerry Lewis's one, there's moments when he's using some weights or one of those machines, and his arms stretch really long, and it becomes a bit surreal. Yeah. Whereas in this one, you've got Sherman Klump breaking a trampoline, and then the contrast of when he becomes Buddy Love, when he transforms into this slick talking ego ids character. He is just having loads of fun, but also getting really pervy and sexual in all of those gym classes he's attending, thrusting every 5 seconds he gets a chance, and all of that. So again, it's kind of using that scene that we saw in the 60s version and then updating it, but doing it in a way where it's looking at the body transformation in a different way.
Yeah, what did you think about the actual transformation scene itself in this?
Oh, it's very much a product of the 90s, isn't it? It's got all of that CGI use. He almost kind of deflates, doesn't he? And it looks quite monstrous, the way that his body is shifting and changing, and they've got all the old 90s computers with the kind of wireframe image of what's going to happen to Sherman's body. All of these kind of 90s technology things to explain what's happening before you do it. It wasn't as colourful as in the 60s version. The 60s version was full of like all these bright colours and paints and different transformations there. In this version, it's all of that stuff's kind of taken down a notch, but you do see that. I think when he does the actual first transformation, it's not as full on as I thought it was going to be. I think he drinks one fluorescent blue vial of liquid and then kind of falls to the ground, and then he comes back up as Buddy Love. Whereas later on, when he kind of switches, that's when you get more of the kind of the CGI bits in.
Yeah, I prefer the first one. I think they do it right, and they lean into they're leaning into the Jerry Lewis version, although that was more fantastical and a bit of a feast for the eyes. But the collapsing to the floor and kind of like clambering back up as Buddy Love, that's how Jerry Lewis did it. But it's also how mad scientists have been doing it since the turn of the century. So they lean into that trope. And I really like that. And then it's played more for laughs every other time they do it. But I think it's important to get that first transformation right and follow the mad scientist formula before you start playing around with your CGI and experimenting with the giant lip or whatever, or the big ass at the end, and playing it for laughs.
And the reasons that he's doing this experiment as well, they are slightly different to the Jerry Lewis one, because he's in all of these other mad science films, it's kind of where they're doing this for their own hubris to achieve something, and that's the main reason. It's that scientific curiosity. In this, Sherman is feeling so down and out, so depressed by his outward appearance, and after he's been mocked by Dave Chappelle in that comedy show, he feels like he needs to make a change, and he can't physically make a change without this kind of miracle drug that he's been inventing on the side anyway. So that's why he is led into experimenting on himself, and that kind of experimentation on yourself, that's such a mad science like last resort. But in this, it's not to achieve his scientific goal. It's because he feels like he needs this for his own self-improvement.
Yeah, I still think that's hubris, though. I still think that's a mad scientist with a great deal of hubris. He's got all these hamsters that he's experimenting on, and he's got a particular hamster, Shelley, that's the main subject of the experiment. And he's extremely eager to jump straight from continuing the experiments on Shelley to doing it on himself because he feels bad about his body image. So there's self-improvement, but it's absolutely born out of hubris. He wants to be, he's being quite shallow, and in that shallow, desire to be skinny, he's jumping all of these ethical boundaries of science and just leaving the safety of the experiment with the hamsters to test it on himself. And it does turn out to be too soon, and it's dangerous, and it has all these crazy consequences that make up the rest of the movie. So I think he's absolutely got the hubris. He's just a sort of gentle, likable, down on his luck kind of character. So maybe we feel a bit more sympathetic towards Sherman, but he's as hubristic as any other mad scientist.
Yeah, I can see your point there, because he's doing it because he's got that desire to do it, and that's literally what every one of these scientists is doing it for, because of that. But I think the way that they've switched it again into the 90s body image stuff, it's such like a product of the time, because that combined with the other kind of stories which were coming out in this kind of mid-90s period, because it makes me think about like Mrs. Doubtfire. That was kind of a body image transformation film coming out in the 90s.
Yeah.
And The Mask. The Mask was very much this kind of story as well, told in a slightly different way. You've got Jim Carrey as this kind of nerdy banker who wants some confidence, and he puts on this mask, and then you get the CGI 90s effects come in, and you get this transformation again. So I think those films coming out, it's really saying something about what's going on culturally, because there is this kind of shift in people's appearance and diet culture and gym culture, and that's kind of all coming up again, and like cosmetic surgery, and it feels like that's something that's happening around about this time in like popular media. So this idea of changing yourself and what the repercussions of that are kind of feels like a perfect time to go back to this mad scientist idea of the transformation, the Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, the Mrs. Doubtfire comparison is really interesting as well, because that's an incredible celebration of makeup. Like the character that lets Robin Williams do that is a makeup artist, isn't he? And like his friend is a makeup artist, and you've got all the decades of incredible makeup and physical special effects leading up to the 90s. And then that's all being celebrated in Mrs. Doubtfire, and they're having loads of fun with that. And then The Nutty Professor is a film that takes that celebration of that craft and kind of marries it up with the emerging CGI craft as well. So when we talk about like mad science of filmmaking, behind the scenes sort of stuff, you've got both those elements coming together, I think, in The Nutty Professor. Like, he looks amazing. Eddie Murphy looks totally convincing as Sherman Klump. It's It feels reductive to say it's a good fat suit, but it's a bloody good fat suit. It's such a good transformation on him. And then you've got all the CGI as well, which I think it's aging, like it's showing its age, but it doesn't look bad. Some of it looks really great, and especially where you're getting the two of those things together, like CGI into the Sherman Clump makeup effects on Eddie Murphy from Buddy Love to Sherman, that kind of transformation. It looks great.
It's kind of like this meeting of spectacle and sentiment in all these films as well, because they're quite sentimental. Like Mrs. Doubtfire, that really pulls at the heartstrings. And this kind of has a sentimentality to it as well, which kind of makes it, I think that's why I kind of identify it with like a family film, because of those emotional things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is, isn't it? That's why it's sort of stuck in my head as like a kid's movie, because I was a kid when I saw it, and also that sentimentality is what you kind of take away from it, but it's not really a kid's movie watching it back as an adult. It's a very sympathetic portrayal of Sherman Clump by the end of the film, which I was quite surprised by, because it doesn't start that way, because the first 20 minutes are like, here's how fat Sherman is, here's another way that Sherman is fat, he can't use a chalkboard. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, people are aware of their like stomach. Like, you can use a chalkboard and you wouldn't wipe off all the chalk. Sherman's like a 35-year-old man. He would be aware of his body. He's bumping levers in the lab. An extremely conveniently placed ass-level lever that will release every hamster in the lab if only a big ass will bump into. It's just truly absurd ways to craft visual depictions of how fat Sherman is. So I was quite surprised that it's actually quite, he is a nice character and portrayed sympathetically by the end of the film.
Because that's what I was worried about when I revisited this as well.
Yeah.
Kind of how those depictions of like more overweight people are done in the film. Because like there is a lot of like fat jokes and things like that going on. And there's a lot of sort of crude humor being used. But I think you're right. The kind of absurdity of it, the over-the-top nature of everything puts it in that kind of slapstick comedy bracket a little bit more. But it's still a very weird one to revisit, because it feels like all of those kind of depictions and body image stuff are outdated now.
Yeah. But I think where it gets sympathetic and more likable towards Sherman is that desire for self-improvement. Yes, there's mad science hubris, but it comes from a very relatable desire to lose weight. But he's also like he's putting in the work, and he's upset about his body image. At points in the film, you were talking about the gym scene. There's two gym scenes. There's Sherman and Buddy both have a gym scene, but when Sherman is trying to work out, he's got a date and he's excited about it, and he just wants to like look his best and stuff like that. It's extremely relatable, and it's not like. But he's also sort of shamed by what he's seeing on TV. He's ashamed of his like binge eating as well. Like it's sad to see him in those moments. And Eddie Murphy's sort of playing it for laughs, like pouring M&Ms into your face. But there's also he's a good actor as well. Like I think you can see that Sherman's heart is breaking at the same time. You can still get laughs in those moments. But yeah, I think he brings heart to that character, and you do see that Sherman wants to improve his body. So he's willing to put the work in, but then also he has these abilities as a mad scientist, and he's able to craft this magic potion basically that shortcuts the hard work that he was doing. And then his hubris takes him down that shortcut route and away from the Richard Simmons, aerobics route.
It's also interesting when you look at the way the other characters respond to Sherman as well, because it's only the nasty characters that comment on his appearance. When you look at like his love interest, Jada Pinkett Smith, Carla Purdy, she doesn't care that he looks that way or anything like that. She just likes him for him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't realize that. And in his head, he's like, someone like that would never go for someone like me. And that's, again, the sentimentality in there and the kind of like emotion. And it's the other character's response to that. But also because it's so internal for Sherman's character. He is feeling all of this because of all of these weight loss things that he's seeing on TV and all that. He's like so focused on that stuff. But then when he's around his family, nobody cares. They're having like a great big meal. It's kind of this image that is being pushed onto him by the media in general.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the characters that are unpleasant to him are absolutely horrible to him. The dean calls him a fat tub of goo, amongst other things. Like, and that's in like the first 5 minutes. Like, it's absolutely hateful. Can you imagine if your employer called you a fat tub of goo?
Jesus. And he threatens to kill him, doesn't he? He says, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to cut off your air supply until you die.
Yeah, that was amazing.
It was very
That's Buddy, though, isn't it?
Well, Buddy says that. And
Wait, who says they're going to cut off their air? Because
so Dean Richmond...
the dean says that.
Yeah, Dean Richmond says it, and then Buddy repeats it to Dean Richmond later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like moments like that are great in this. Dave Chappelle cropping up was really random as well. And again, the body appearance thing, because when Sherman is Buddy Love, the first thing he points out to Dave Chappelle's character is his appearance. And that becomes a thing that he's using to sort of combat what he's saying against him. So it's all of that. It's very much in that vein in terms of the themes that it's looking at.
Yeah. Chappelle's another character. Is he called Reggie, the character, I think?
Yeah.
Reggie's another character that's, just absolutely goes in on Sherman, is really horrible about his weight. Kind of blew my mind to hear Dave Chappelle say "women be shopping," because I was like, is that where that comes from? Is that line from this movie? Like, because it's like an incredible bit of, like parody of like trite observational comedy of the 90s. Like, it's such a good line, "women be shopping." And then I had to Google it. I was like, does that originate from the Nutty Professor 1996? And I think it does. I think that's like that. I mean, I guess Chappelle came up with it, but it's from this movie.
And yeah, because I think having Dave Chappelle in there, Eddie Murphy's performance throughout, and again doing the multiple members of the Clump family was really good. That scene is a bit cringe when you look at it now, just all of the over fart humor.
I kind of love it. It goes on forever. There's 2 dinner scenes at the Clump household, and both of them sort of feel like they're going on for hours and hours. Like it's like a Beckett play at times, but I sort of love it as well.
I think the reason that I'm probably a bit more funny about it is because I watched it, and then my girlfriend was in the flat, and she was watching that and was just giving me like the evilest eyes. Like, what are you watching?
Some of these films are hard to defend with our partners and loved ones. But I don't know, I sort of love it. I think that the grandma in particular is really, really funny, talking about relations and how often she's had relations, and threatening to kill her son-in-law, just constantly like, come over here, I'll stab you. Like, I do think it's quite funny. It's also really, it's really well done technologically. Like, it's a good performance. He doesn't, there's only a few moments towards the end where the mum and the dad Clump are at the event, the university event at the end of the film, where I thought it doesn't look like Eddie Murphy is talking to himself. Like, the eye line doesn't match up, basically. But around the dinner table, it's flawless. Like, it looks like 6 people, 5 Eddie Murphys, is it 5, I think? And plus the nephew, who's not played by Eddie Murphy. But, it's seamless. Like, they all just look like they're there. They're looking at each other. They're responding to each other. It's perfectly edited. And he's incredibly compelling as 5 separate people sitting around a table.
Yeah, all the different sorts of vocal inflections he's doing, all the different accents. He's just so good as appearing as all these different characters in that scene.
It becomes like a joke, like a real world joke, that this is what Eddie Murphy's career became for a bit, was just playing multiple roles. But like, look back at this. This is why, because he's funny in those characters and he's good at it. Like, he really sells that he's different people on screen with himself. He obviously enjoys doing it. He's willing to sit in a makeup chair for hours and hours for different characters that require all of this. And clearly he gets a kick out of it. He must find it funny. So yeah, it's no surprise he did, like, the next sort of 10 years of his career are defined by, makeup, prosthetics, and playing multiple characters against himself.
And even when he's playing Sherman Clump and Buddy Love, they're still very different. I mean, they're different in their characters and the way they are, but also just, again, the vocal performance.
Yeah.
Like, Sherman has kind of like a Barry White kind of voice, and then Buddy has a very high pitched. He's going more Donkey and Shrek kind of thing for that.
Yeah, I think Sherman has maybe a bit of a southern twang to his voice,
100%.
and
Yeah.
I mean Eddie Murphy's a New Yorker, I believe, like just from New York, and I think Buddy's voice is closer to Eddie Murphy's voice, isn't it? That's just his normal voice. There's lots of nice moments where like Sherman is breaking out. You know, they do it with the CGI, but Eddie Murphy does it first with his voice when Sherman's starting to take over again. There's a really nice moment where Buddy impersonates Sherman doing that in order to trick the student who's helping him. So he's doing Buddy Love doing an impression of Sherman Clump's voice.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the Sherman Clump voice, but it's close to that. That's amazing. That's great character work. It's such a subtle thing to do, but someone like Eddie Murphy, you know, who's done all this sketch comedy background, has all these voices in his locker, but to be able to do an impression of a character doing an impression is a real talent.
I was really taken by just how unhinged Buddy Love seemed watching this again.
Yeah.
Like all of the moments are quite threatening in a really sort of eerie way.
And they get more so, don't they? There's real character development for both Sherman and Buddy in a way that I do not think is there in the Jerry Lewis version. Like, Buddy is annoying and brash, but there's something there that Jada Pinkett likes. You know, she does like the charm, but it's undeniable that he gets more threatening and menacing as the film goes on. By the point where he's telling the dean he's going to kill him, that is like, you know, that's a scene of violence, isn't it? And I really like that. And it's got a sci-fi explanation with this testosterone, you know, the way the potion is working. It's ramping up Buddy's testosterone levels. And he's at like 60,000% testosterone levels or something by the end of the movie. And that's why he's acting that way. But Murphy pulls that off in his performance. Like, Buddy changes and Buddy is a nastier guy by the end of the movie, which is obviously, it just works better. You know, the dichotomy cannot be sustained between these two characters, so you need one of them to become even worse, so that Sherman becomes the hero who can sort of, you know, win at the end.
Yeah, I mean, at the end as well, when they've got that scene where Eddie Murphy is fighting himself as both these characters, and you've got the real the CGI transformations you mentioned earlier, all of that stuff's coming in where suddenly he's punching himself with like a large hand, a large fist all of a sudden, and then he's like shifting into Sherman's face, then shifting out back to Buddy Love's face. All of that kind of stuff. It kind of like veers on the body horror aspect of it a little bit. Like, it was more sort of grotesque than I remember it. Like, obviously it's funny because it's funny to like suddenly have a massive hand and then not have a massive hand. But I felt like that was quite an interesting addition to what was going on.
Yeah, I think that the body horror element comes out from the Sherman physically like breaking out of Buddy Love. And it's not just that Buddy becomes fatter, it's that he becomes grotesquely fat in an individual place. Like, the hands, when they pop out, it's much bigger than Sherman's hand. It is like this physical warping of his body as Sherman tries to sort of break through the shell of Buddy, which has a body horror element. It's also it's just pure slapstick as well at times, isn't it? Very much reminiscent of Evil Dead 2 when Ash has that great fight scene with his own hand that's possessed by the Deadites. That's what I was reminded of in that final fight scene with himself. I thought more slapstick comedy than body horror, but there's some of that body horror stuff, like with the big lip and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's that uncontrollable nature of it, isn't it? Because he can't control when that's happening. He tries to with his stopwatch and the alarms and stuff, knowing that he has to take the potion at certain times. But yeah, I think anything like this, where you can't control your body, that becomes a horror in itself, which I think is quite an interesting aspect of this. Because also there are like people have all sorts of like issues with weight for whatever reason, and sometimes you can't control things like this, and I think that it's kind of like veering into that realm as well with this kind of transformation that's happening. The other thing I was thinking about watching this as well is, isn't it strange that now the medical, well, I'm not sure if it's the medical, it's more the pharmaceutical industry, they are now selling this kind of serum in the form of stuff like Ozempic.
Yeah.
So it's a weird kind of like sci-fi crossing over into the real world. It's not like an instantaneous process like in Nutty Professor, but that's what they're marketing now. They're
But it's
marketing
fairly rapid, isn't it? You know, in relative terms, it's
So they've made that a real science, but also I think it's not great for you.
I don't know. I think it's safer than other similar things that have been around for a longer time. That's why it's exploded in popularity. Like you can get Ozempic over here online. And I just say that because it's been available in America for longer. And I think, like, you know, with the utmost respect to the American pharmaceutical industry, you can get pretty much whatever you want, it seems like, if you're willing to pay for it. But when things are available in America and then they become available in Britain, I'm a bit like, oh, I guess it's safe. You know, I don't know if that's the right attitude to have.
It is a big thing with celebrities as well. And again, it kind of like, if you're looking at the 90s cosmetic culture, that's becoming something that's feeding into now, because this new weight loss drug is becoming such a big thing within the media industry.
But it doesn't turn you into, you know, an arrogant testosterone monster, as far as I'm aware.
As far as we know, that could be one of the side effects on the bit of paper that you get in the box, where it's got like 100 different side effects, or on one of those American pharmaceutical adverts where it tells you all of the worst case scenarios just at the end in the middle of the advert.
Yeah. May turn into buddy love. Side effects include buddy love.
But I think all in all, this was like an interesting evolution of the mad scientist in the 90s. This kind of more family friend. Well, I keep saying family friend.
It's
more
moving in that direction.
Teen comedy, moving back to the family friendly thing, revisiting this old IP, and then updating it. I mean, this was just like also having a black protagonist as well, like having Eddie Murphy in this character, and kind of just shifting the conversation in different ways. I think all of that was such an interesting departure from what we had with Jerry Lewis. I mean, Jerry Lewis has said that he prefers this version to his original and said it's better. I mean, probably because it's got more scripts stuff going on and more kind of like a progressive narrative, I'd guess, because you were saying about the character development.
Yeah, I mean, he's also a producer on the film, and I expect he said that at the time of release and was motivated to say that. But I agree with him. I think it is better than his version. Apart from the transformation scene, which is absolutely stellar in the original Nutty Professor, everything about this film is better. It's that combination of celebrating makeup effects and early-ish CGI effects. Those two things combined, also, and combining those into, you know, a stunning comedic performer who can handle multiple roles and transforming into a different person, handle that effortlessly, and taking you know, one of the greatest performers, comedy performers of the 90s, and mixing him in with the CGI and the makeup effects to enhance that character work that he's been working on for decades.
And it's got a great moral message at the end of it. It's like Sherman accepts himself and like he learns to love himself without having the buddy love character, the id, floating around, and he becomes comfortable in his own skin. And I know there was a sequel afterwards, which apparently did terribly. Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps.
Yeah, if you didn't like those scenes around the dinner table, maybe.
Yeah. Have you seen the second one?
No, I haven't seen it. I know that Buddy Love is in it. So, well, I mean, he has to be, doesn't he? But obviously Sherman goes back to the mad science well.
Yeah, I think there's something about a de-aging potion in that one. And the other members of the Clump family want to de-age, and all of this stuff comes into play. But again, it's moving away from this initial Jekyll and Hyde story, which I think works so well in the context of this particular 90s film.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this way more than I expected to be honest with you. I certainly haven't seen it. It's never even crossed my mind to rewatch this. But it was way funnier than I thought. Really fun to see Dave Chappelle doing that parody of you know, circuit comedians in the 90s. He's brilliant. And Eddie Murphy's, I think, at the top of his game in this film. And it's ridiculous, and it just treads that line perfectly between being too silly and also like good fun.
And again, looking at it for the mad science of it, I think it's another interesting aspect of mad science in general across the genre. And again, mixing comedy. We've had so many comedies this series.
It's the perfect sci-fi subgenre for comedy, isn't it?
Definitely. And looking at another comedy actor, let's look at Robin Williams in Flubber from 1997.
Hi listeners, hope you're enjoying the show. If you want to support us and get access to hundreds of hours of bonus episodes, you can sign up to our Patreon.
We've got discussions on all the latest sci-fi films in cinemas, the Bad Movie Bunker, and Patrons' Picks, as well as mini-series covering your favourite franchises.
Patrons get to have their say on what we cover, both over on Patreon and right here on the main show too.
So if you want to join, head over to patreon.com/Journey Through Sci-Fi.
Now, back to the episode.
Please, you know me. You know how sometimes I can get really fixated on an idea?
I don't want to hear it.
Sarah, you've got to hear it. Sarah, this is the reason I didn't make it last night. It's flubber. Flubber. It's a metastable compound, Sarah. In layman's terms, if you apply a small amount of energy, it liberates an enormous quantity of energy. But the total effect is transient, Sarah. The moment you stop applying energy, it returns to a quasi-plasmoid state. Isn't it remarkable, Sarah?
What's remarkable, Philip, is that I ever fell in love with you. You broke my heart.
So Flubber, this is a remake of The Absent-Minded Professor, so Disney producing both movies. This is directed by Les Mayfield and came out in 1997. I remember this vividly, James. I mean, I saw The Nutty Professor when I was a kid, but I don't know when. I think I saw it at home. But Flubber was like, it was advertised everywhere. That green goo was just everything. And I was just desperate to see this. So I know I saw this in the cinema. And yeah, I was super keen for this movie. What are your memories of this one as a kid?
One of my memories is the Happy Meal toys of this film. Yeah, they had like a bunch of them. They had Robin Williams' character in a little car, which didn't look like his character at all. They had the clear up robot. They had Weebo, and they had the Flubber in like a little kind of containment unit like you see in the film. So I remember that, and I remember specifically, I think the cleanup robot, having that and just playing with that when I was a kid. So that's one of my memories of Flubber. But that again shows, because it appeals to kids, Happy Meals are marketed at kids, and I was perfect for this.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kids' movie. So I remember both of these films as kids' movies, and I was a little bit surprised by The Nutty Professor. But this is exactly as I remember it. This is a movie for children. This is a Disney family movie. And it's exactly as I remember it. It's slapstick, it's silly, but there is this sci-fi core of it. I mean, we're talking about like really early sci-fi. Certainly sci-fi cinema experiences for me. I think I saw Jurassic Park at the cinema, but I was literally like 5 or something, like way too young to really understand what I was watching. So this is probably one of my earliest sci-fi cinema experiences.
And I think if we look at this one compared to the 60s version again, it's that kind of update. And again, it feels very 90s CGI. So in that original film that we looked at, the black and white, or you looked at a colorized version of The Absent-Minded Professor.
Purple Flubber.
Yeah, the purple Flubber. But in this, you've got this green goo, sentient, dancing Flubber that is present in this film.
Sentient, yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? That's a key difference, I think, between this and The Absent-Minded Professor. Flubber is just flying rubber in The Absent-Minded Professor, whereas this, as soon as it kind of comes out of the, what do you call it, icy containment unit that he makes it in, it moves like an animal, doesn't it? It's imitating Phil's movements, and he's interacting with it. He's also like slapping it between his hands and like squishing it and stretching it, but he's getting it to like mimic it. He's pointing like you would with a dog and like fooling it to sort of identify its intelligence. So that feels like quite a big departure from the 1960s, that the Flubber essentially is more of a creature than a substance, even though it's still just called flying rubber Flubber.
Yeah, even to the point that it's got its own voice actor as well. Scott Martin Gershin actually played the voice of Flubber. He's a sound designer, creative director, I think. He does lots of animation stuff. And yeah, just the fact that when I saw that in the cast list, I was like, yeah, that's right. Flubber is a legitimate character in the film. But then, like you say, it's also used in all these weird, like, it's got all these other weird uses. So the flying basketball players on the shoes and on the tacks and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of this weird combination of being an actual creature when it's all together and then being like something that they use. And it never really gets into the kind of the sort of crux of that. But it's an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, this isn't a movie that's exploring what it means to create life, like a Frankenstein story, which is almost disappointing, I think, watching it as a remake, having seen the original. Because this is a really faithful remake of The Absent-Minded Professor, apart from that element to Flubber. And I think it's CGI driven, isn't it? It's the updates in technology and special effects and what that allows you to do with Flubber. For example, a Busby Berkeley dance sequence, that's just all about, with a Danny Elfman composed score that's literally just like 5 minutes of little Flubber creatures dancing. It's much more about doing that kind of a thing than getting into what it means to create a sentient substance. And I think we're definitely overthinking it because we're prone to do that because of the nature of the podcast. But that was like front of mind for me, that like, oh, he's created living rubber. That's really quite interesting, and he's interacting with it, and they form like a family unit with the Flubber as the child at the end of the movie. Flubber and a robot as the children, which is a nice resolution to that point. But it doesn't explore it at all in the interim during the movie. And you were just saying about it, like when it gets split off and they use it. When is Flubber sentient? When is it not sentient? When does it stop being sentient? How many sentient organisms is Flubber? Yeah. Is it just one little green guy that has the same mind when it splits apart? And how little of itself can it split off and not? Yeah, it is a hive mind. I think it is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because like when it's on the tacks, it still has its little voice. The little
does it? Oh right, okay. Well, there you go. That's interesting.
When it springs to life, you hear the little sound.
When it's like diluted into the hand cream, do you think it's sort of aware that it's
living on his hands?
Yeah. Smear.
I mean, the sci-fi of Flubber, I never thought we'd get this deep into the sci-fi meanings of Flubber so early on, but we have to. But looking again at the fact that it's sentient, I think that scene you were talking to, the Busby Berkeley bit, that kind of the CGI effects that they're using in that, it's Disneyfied as well, isn't it? Because you've got that big dance sequence in the film where the Flubber is dancing when Weebo puts the vinyl on. And that reminded me of Fantasia and the Sorcerer's Apprentice bit with like the brooms that are magically dancing around. Yeah. And it feels like it's just kind of redoing that in a way, but then this whole film feels like it's a way for Disney to show off its CGI effects, because at this point they'd had a partnership with Industrial Light and Magic. So they were really trying to position themselves as a big like new CGI company, as well as having all the animation. They just made a bunch of remakes. So remakes and live action films. So I think they did 101 Dalmatians around about this time. And it really felt like Disney were trying to sort of veer into live action and do something a bit more like that, like they did with The Absent-Minded Professor way back in the 60s, but kind of update everything for the 90s. So this kind of use of this new studio is quite an interesting aspect of this and goes into the mad science of the filmmaking again.
Yeah, it does feel like an advert for ILM at times, doesn't it? That I think that, we were just talking about the dance sequence. That absolutely, it stands out. I mean, it's not bad. It's just like, I think, almost 30 years later, you watch it and you're like, I can sort of see what's going on here. I'm trying to remember like how I would have reacted to that as a kid and if I enjoyed it. To be honest, I don't think I would be that into the whole dance sequence bit. Like Flubber's great fun for kids, but more so it's the interaction between the human characters and the Flubber, right? So when Flubber is bouncing around a room and knocking into people's heads. That's the stuff that would have entertained me. Whereas I think I would have just been a bit bewildered by like a 5-minute dance sequence of Flubber by ILM.
But they do really go into the sci-fi of it as well with the character of Weibo as well, don't they?
Yeah.
So you've got an AI character in a 90s family film with Robin Williams, which I don't think I ever really appreciated. But like going back to your point at the start, this was one of the first sci-fi films you think you watched when you were kids. It does have those elements, doesn't it?
It does, and again, it's a bit of a missed opportunity in this film. There's two like fully sentient artificial creatures in the movie, and the film is not about either of them or their sentience. So Weibo is this fully intelligent, sentient, artificial intelligence who dies, and then Phil grieves her death and then very briefly says like, yeah, I don't really know how I invented her as an accident and I created pure sentience and I've been trying to do it ever since. It's like, what do you mean you've been trying to do it? You haven't talked about that. You've been making green Flubber. Like, that's your whole deal. Like, you've got a sentient robot living with you in your house, and all of your scientific endeavors are spent on a different project. That's mad, but hey, he's absent-minded.
He is absent-minded, and he's constantly flip-flopping between different stuff, isn't he? And I think just that the absent-minded nature of it, I think what he's got is the kind of summit fever that happens when he makes these inventions, and he's very well-meaning throughout the entire thing. Like Professor Brainard is doing these things because he wants to get to a point, but he gets like overly obsessed with them and then forgets the time and forgets what he's doing. I'm often a victim of this. Whenever I'm doing some sort of like podcasting things, I will forget what's going on and I'll just be like centered on making whatever I'm making and doing that. And then hours go past and I'm like, oh no, I'm supposed to go and do this. And I think that kind of eccentricity around it and that single-mindedness over invention is something that's very apparent in the sort of like the 90s and this kind of digital age that we're moving in towards, where you've got internet, you've got home computers, you've got new devices, you've got TV, you've got media. There's lots of things to distract you and there's lots of things to do all the time. So I think that's kind of a update of Professor Brainard's character a little bit, because the absent-mindedness is almost explained a little bit by that, because you might become more absent-minded in sort of like the late 90s because there's so much going on all the time. You might forget that one thing and you're trying to keep track of this kind of very noisy world that is suddenly around you.
Yeah. There's also a more direct explanation of his absent-mindedness in this film that I don't remember from the original, which is he basically just says he's just absent-minded because he's in love with Sarah, which I thought was a big cop-out. I thought that... I
prefer my explanation.
Yeah, well, yeah, your explanation is good. And also, if you were in a relationship with Robin Williams in this film and he was doing things like forgetting your wedding for the third time in a row, and he said, yeah, I'm just like that because I love you so much. I mean, that would be... Right. That alone would be grounds for a breakup. That's gaslighting behavior, right? Like, it's actually because I love you so much that I'm a terrible partner to you. Like, that's bullshit. You can't say that to somebody you love.
Looking at this film as an adult, it's a whole different experience, isn't it?
I mean, they're lucky it's Robin Williams delivering that line, because obviously he can sell it. And his ability to bring heart to a character in, you know, who's talking to a floating robot that isn't there, or talking to Flubber, you know, like he's like Eddie Murphy, he can sell pretty much anything. You can put him in the most high concept, ridiculous scenarios, and he can find some heart in the character and bring that to the screen. That's the magic of Robin Williams. So because it's him delivering a line like, I'm absent-minded because I love her so much, you're like, okay, I believe you, Robin, but don't come and say that to me. I would not appreciate it.
But Robin Williams is really great in this, isn't he? Because all of the improvisations he's doing, that manic energy that he's bringing to the performance, it really fits this mad scientist character. It's interesting that he'd done Aladdin a few years before this.
Yeah.
I think that there'd been some sort of... he had some sort of business with Disney where they'd fallen out over something. I'm not exactly sure about the ins and outs of it, but then they managed to get him back for this. But he really does bring a lot to the character.
I think it was the use of like advertising rights or something like that. He'd had a falling out with Disney, but obviously that's reconciled by the time of this film. You know, money talks, I suppose. But yeah, good to see him in this role. I mean, he is. Yeah, you're right. He is brilliant at this. He's so much better than Fred McMurray in the original movie. Like he's perfect. And you know, and like Eddie Murphy as well. You know, Eddie Murphy better than Jerry Lewis. Robin Williams is better than Fred McMurray. These are perfectly cast comedic talents of the 90s playing these comedic mad science roles. I think just the casting alone justifies the existence of both of these remakes. Like, you take the biggest comedic stars. I don't like. Jim Carrey didn't do like a sci-fi remake in the 90s. I don't think. You kind of need a Jim Carrey film in the mix here just to round out the sort of comedic stars of the 90s. But getting the biggest names in comedy to do these particular films in these mad science roles works so well and you know, justifies their existence. This got absolutely panned by critics, didn't it, Flubber? But you could never make me hate any Robin Williams movie, really, especially one where he's playing a wacky mad scientist.
Yeah, because it's so wacky, the entire thing, and that kind of childlike magic it's got to it as well. Because I made the Fantasia comparison a little while ago, but it does kind of have a kind of family magical energy to it. And I think that is because they're using this science, but they're using it in a fun kind of slapsticky way again. Because the way that the Flubber is reacting to everything, it's all very comedy based. It's at one point the maniacal character who keeps stealing Robin Williams' ideas, played by Christopher McDonald, Wilson Croft, he swallows the Flubber, and then the Flubber goes flying out of his arse.
Yeah.
Like mad stuff like that, which probably is not as on the family friendly side, but it's like all this kind of like weirdness to it, which makes it more fantastical than some of the mad science things we've been looking at. And if you compare it to like a weird science from the 80s, it's got that kind of off the wall imaginative use of the technology that it's creating, but it's doing it in a slightly different way because it's more about leaning into the comedy aspects of it.
Yeah, more of the slapstick stuff, and it doesn't have. I think it's interesting to like watch it as a pair with the Nutty Professor, because it's that celebration of CGI and a slapstick performer and allowing those two things to come together. But it's lacking. It almost feels like it's lacking the makeup element, right? That there's such an alchemy in the Nutty Professor with makeup, practical effects, and CGI effects, and Eddie Murphy, and you've got two of those ingredients in Flubber, but it's missing the third one, which is the makeup effects, and it's leaning more into the CGI and really extending the use of CGI and like we said, advertising ILM's wares, basically. Whereas I think it's in the Nutty Professor, it's used to enhance the other two elements. All three elements are there to enhance the other two elements. Whereas I think Robin Williams is doing his absolute best Robin Williams, but he's doing it in service of a CGI movie, right? And I don't think the two things perfectly complement each other. Because actually the best slapstick stuff, Flubber, you know, the concept of Flubber is in the scene. Like, he's coated a basketball, or he's coated his shoes and he's testing it out in the basketball court. So Flubber exists diegetically, but not CGI. It's wire work and pinging Robin Williams around and hitting him in the face with a sack of clay or whatever it is. You know, stuff like that. That kind of slapstick, Flubber's in the scene, but not visually. And I think that's actually where it's better than where he's interacting with the CGI stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does feel like it's missing that kind of... I think, yeah, the closest thing is that wire work to the practical effectsness of this. And then because they are like, it is like an advertisement for ILM, like you're saying, I think all of that's coming in there. It's quite ironic though, because that commercial element of this film is also what the film's about. That commercialization of science is coming back in this film as well, that we've looked at previously in the series. And the idea of science can sell. And when they need to bail the college out, Philip and Sarah, they decide to sell Flubber and the creation of flying cars. But then you've got these evil corporate guys coming in. You've got Chester Hoenicker, played by Raymond J. Barry. He comes in and he's like, right, I'm going to steal this. And then you've got Wilson Croft again, Christopher McDonald, trying to steal the ideas. So this kind of stealing of scientific expertise is in there, and the commercialization of that.
There's commercialization and, you know, monetary value is ascribed to Flubber very clearly. But what's interesting is that Phil has an opportunity to sell it for monetary gain, or well, he's kind of being blackmailed, so he wouldn't really get the monetary gain. But his view is that Flubber is the intellectual property of the scientific institute that he works for. There is capitalization and commercialization of Flubber, but he sees himself, you know, as part of a sort of scientific institution, and Flubber therefore becomes like, you know, the opportunity to become a public good. Even if you're selling it to like a car company to make money, that money is going into an educational institution rather than just Philip Brainard's pocket, which is really a really like noble sort of scientific sentiment, just sort of like sprinkled in at the end, in amongst all of the other kind of silly slapstick stuff.
Whereas when we go back to the original, in kind of like the post-war America, the first place they try to sell the Flubber to is to the military. To the military. So now it's going back to commercialism, and the big car companies is where it goes. So that's an interesting change in the public use of it.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it?
But essentially, this is a love story, isn't it? And it's kind of like a love triangle that's going on as well. So it's not just between Philip and Sarah. You've also got Weibo's character in there, and you talked a little bit about her sentience earlier. How do you feel about that sort of mad scientist love triangle that's happening in this film?
Yeah, there's something really interesting about Weibo from a sci-fi point of view, and I think it's glossed over. Phil has a line that's like, "What becomes of the soul of a machine, Sarah?" Which is like, whoa, like that's a crazy line to just come out of nowhere. But I have to say, like, for how interesting she is as a character, I also think she's the worst thing about the movie. I absolutely hate Weibo.
Really?
That you have a sentient character. She's not just like an automaton robot who's messing up Phil's schedule. She is a sentient, living being who is actively sabotaging Phil and Sarah's happiness at the start of the movie. Phil is capable of doing that himself, but she's like deleting his own wedding from his schedule, knowing full well that he will forget on his own. I'm not absolving him of guilt in this. You know, I still think it's bad that he claims that he's absent-minded just because he loves his girlfriend so much. That's poor form. But she's not helping matters, and she pissed me off in this film. Like,
she a little bit HAL 9000.
Like a love triangle HAL.
Love triangle
like,
HAL. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Imagine if you had like an AI assistant on your phone and it was deleting like dates with your girlfriend because it was jealous. Like, how would you feel?
I mean, you'd have to get a different assistant, wouldn't you? But yeah, but then it's weird because this assistant is also his child, but his child has a crush on him because Weber doesn't look at herself as a child. She looks at herself as this image she creates of herself for this hologram.
Well, that's classic mad science stuff, isn't it? The sort of the sexual politics of the relationship between the creator and the creation. You know, we've seen other films get into that. They certainly don't get into that, and they just kill her off and replace her with like a more actual daughter character. That presumably does not have the same feelings for Phil because she's programmed more daughterly. Did you recognise the voice of Weibo? Yes, I did, but I couldn't place her. It's like presumably someone who's done an awful lot of Disney voice work. Yeah, it's Jodie Benson, who also did The Little Mermaid. Right, okay. So it's the voice of Ariel. Yeah, she's got a sort of perfect American chipper like voice. I can imagine she's done like 1,000 roles for Disney.
Yeah. But then when you see Weibo's like hologram, it's not Jodie Benson. I think it's Leslie Stephenson.
Okay.
Because it's a different, so it's like it's got Jodie Benson's voice, but it's a different actress.
Because voice actors don't always look like we might want them to look like based on their vocal performance.
That's terrible, but it's probably what they were doing with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Weibo's really interesting. I think just the way that Weibo looks as well, this sort of floating robot, but the way that she visualizes her emotions because she hasn't got like a face. So she can't express her emotions that way. She's just got this video monitor and she just plays back different like clips from films and cartoons. And I think that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, that's a good design element. The sort of Disney library at her beck and call to express herself. No, I think it's a good robot design and a good little AI assistant character. It's just the actual personality of Weibo drove me completely insane watching the film because she was ruining Phil's life.
And then when Weebette comes along towards the end, were you like, oh, why has he now got a teenage daughter? Or is that...
No, I think it kind of works.
Yeah?
This I like this.
Becomes
sort
a family, doesn't it?
The final image of the family unit that they formed, and they're not going to be a normal family, and they never could. And the fact that the wedding goes ahead kind of remotely as well. There's something quite nice about that. The kind of utilizing technology and accepting, everyone's making allowances for each other, and maybe he should have made time for his own wedding, but using technology in that way, I think is really appropriate and carves them out a sort of family unit niche that works for the context of these characters.
Yeah, and it is nice. Is it a little bit weird that Weebette calls Sarah mum when Weibo was the mum, but like the stepmom?
Yeah. Well,
It's a nice family film. I'm not going to read into.
Yeah,
we're reading into this film so much already. I'm not going to go there. But yeah, like I think the fact you get this kind of this wedding at the end, and they managed to make it work through the remote access is really funny.
COVID wedding.
Yeah, COVID wedding. But yeah, all in all, I think Flubber was way more sci-fi than I think I gave it credit for when I first thought about this film, and just going into it now, this probably explains a lot of the reasons why I have such attachment to certain sci-fi tropes now, because I watched this as a kid and it's got all of those elements in there mixed in with this humor and sentimentality and CGI, the whiz bangs of it.
Yeah.
I think all of that stuff is quite cohesive in this, and it really does update that initial film and it gives it a little something extra. And I think that's not just through the extra sci-fi elements. I think it's the love triangle, although it's awkward. I think that makes it gives it a bit more bite somehow. I think those kind of things just give it more, it's got more going on than the original film.
Yeah, I think so. It's not a great movie, Flubber, but I could never hate a Robin Williams sci-fi movie. And also, I'm just like casting my mind back. I think this may have been the first mad science movie I ever saw. If I saw this at the cinema, and it was certainly one of the first sci-fi cinema trips for me. I think it was probably the first mad science movie I would have ever seen.
I think also just in the context of mad science, it's interesting looking at both these films, this one and Nutty Professor, because you've got scientists who aren't trying to like create something to improve. Well, they are kind of trying to improve society with these creations, but also they've got something fundamentally wrong with them that they are trying to fix. So they're trying to fix themselves first and then maybe help society out. But they're kind of masking it in this great invention that's going to help loads of people out. But it's for them.
Yeah. We'll see if that trend continues in future movies that we look at.
Yes. Well, I think that about wraps up our chat on Flubber and Nutty Professor. Remember, if you want to hear more Journey Through Sci-Fi, make sure you're subscribed to your podcast service of choice so you can get those new episodes when they drop into the feed.
You can follow us on social media or come to our website to find out more about the show. It's journeythroughsci-fi.com.
And if you want a free and easy way to support the show, why not leave us a review? It's a quick and easy way to help new listeners discover the show. 5 stars if you please. It's great. And who knows, if you leave us a nice review, we may mention it in one of our Future Frontiers episodes.
If you want to support the show and get more bonus content from us, you can head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Journey Through Sci-Fi, where we have hours and hours of of bonus episodes for you to listen to.
Next time on the show, we have 2 more mad science films to dive into. We will be looking at Mimic from 1997 and Splice from 2009.
Join us for that, listeners. We'll be back very soon.
Bye.
Journey Through Sci-Fi.